Hey, it's Sam, and I'm talking about January 2022. We're going to do a quick overview of the month ahead. But I also want to let you know about the 2022 Vedic Astrology forecast, the 10 most important shifts that you need to know. Go ahead and register for that as well. It's free. We're going to first talk about the overview of the energy that's moving from Sagittarius to Capricorn. And this brings a sort of alignment with the Sagittarius, where we're aligned with our higher goals and teachings, and then we move around the middle of the month to the more committed aspects of Capricorn, where we need to take those inspirations from Sagittarius, and instead of just being inspired by them, we need to now concentrate on them and focus and be committed to them. So first we start the year with Venus being retrograde in Sagittarius for the entire month, actually until January 29th, but Venus retrograde in Sagittarius has us reflecting on our agreements, where we find beauty and joy. And in Sagittarius, we may also be sort of unwinding our kind of soulmate fantasy. This is one of the things we do with Venus. We project a lot of, again, a kind of soulmate fantasy onto our partners. And again, a lot of that fantasy thing comes from Jupiter and the big idea that, oh, my relationships and my connections and my partner is going to be my reason for living and my purpose and my savior or something. So Venus retrograde now in Sagittarius is to kind of unwind that, unravel that. So what you can be doing right now is noticing how much of your sort of disenchantment with relationships are because you've projected this kind of soulmate fantasy in the past. Maybe look at your past relationships and maybe forgive those partners who, how dare they not live up to my fantasy? I thought they were the god that I wanted them to be, but they were just a normal human being. Oh, right? So we wind up doing this, and no one can live up to our expectations. So again, instead of doing that, notice how you can have much better relationships when they're more realistic. Then you can be grateful for that and whatnot, because you're also a disappointment to other people as well. Sorry to break it to you. But so this is a whole kind of thing that we're going to be going through in January with Venus retrograde in Sagittarius. Now, we also have another retrograde cycle. Mercury turns retrograde on January 14th, but it's in Capricorn. Now, Mercury goes retrograde in very practical Capricorn. This is where all of those details and that story in our head and our communication and whatnot is in a very sort of, concentrated arena. Capricorn is very serious. It's a time to really reflect and notice and, as I say, concentrate on how we're interpreting things, and be willing to notice where we're kind of immature about our ideas, right? And to introspect and to reflect on what are we telling ourselves? How are we, interpreting the events in our life or life in general? There's so many different sort of memes and ways of understanding things now. Are we really researching things thoroughly, or are we just kind of grabbing for pieces of information that already confirms what we already believe and whatnot? This is really a time to reflect and introspect on your information and the story in your head that you're running and how you're perceiving the world. So it starts January 14th, Mercury retrograde in Capricorn for pretty much the rest of the month. Then the sun actually enters Capricorn on the same day. The sun will enter Capricorn on January 14th, moving from Sagittarius to Capricorn. This is going to really, again, sort of further initiate that shift from the Sagittarius inspiration and purpose to the Capricorn seriousness and commitment. When the sun enters Capricorn, now we also have more of that seriousness. And of course, he's also going to enter there with Saturn, who is already in Capricorn. And again, Saturn's seriousness will also make that Mercury retrograde more serious and more concentrated. So starting from January 14th until the middle of February, Saturn joining the sun in Capricorn is going to be a time, again, to really illuminate the beauty of that serious approach to life, where we're responsible, where we're mature, where we grow up, where we're willing to see things as they are, not just hang out in some fantasy land because it's easier and it's fun to be a kid or something. So then we have a couple shifts where Mars will actually enter Sagittarius January 16th. He'll move from Scorpio, where he's been. And again, Mars has been in Scorpio, and he starts the month, or starts the year, January 2022 in Scorpio, where we're still concentrating on strengthening our emotional resistance and our emotional triggering, and even things like our jealousy or things like that. Mars moves from Scorpio into inspired and hopeful Sagittarius in the middle of the month, January 16th, where instead of being more sort of, protective and trying to, again, sort of battle our insecurities, now we can fight for what inspires us. So rather than being sort of protective and triggered in Scorpio, we're now more inspired and taking those vulnerabilities and stresses, and instead of just being with the vulnerability, we're now looking for a higher meaning and a higher teaching. So this Mars in Sagittarius, where he'll be for the next 6 weeks or so, shows a time to really be fighting for what inspires us, and fighting for our higher purpose. But at the same time, this Mars is going to also be joined that Venus in Sagittarius. Like I said at the beginning, Venus is retrograde in Sagittarius for the whole month. And around the middle of the month, again from the 16th, but mainly once Mars gets established in Sagittarius around the 20th or so, until the end of the month, this Mars-Venus is going to be in Sagittarius. So that reflection and that introspection of Venus in Sagittarius that I talked about, sort of unwinding that soulmate fantasy, might meet with some volatility around the middle of the month to the end of the month and into February, as Mars-Venus are very close in Sagittarius, from the middle of the month until into February. So again, at that time, you might have this temptation to, lash out at past partners and get kind of fired up. Resist the temptation. Again, the great thing about the Venus retrograde is we can really introspect and notice the mistakes that we've made, rather than go down the same habitual pattern of blaming others for things. It might get tempting as Mars gets close to Venus around the end of January, but instead of doing that, just be cool and use that Mars in Sagittarius to be more disciplined, to be more courageous, and to find your own inner strength and a healthy independence. So this is January 2022 in a nutshell, pretty concentrated and focused, and I hope you have a great 2022 in general, and especially January 2022. So that's it. Go ahead and register for the 2022 Vedic Astrology Forecast, the 10 most important shifts you need to know for the upcoming year. I cover retrogrades, eclipses, all the important shifts. It's a very transformative and awesome year ahead, but a lot of twists and turns, unexpected shifts. It's a free forecast, more than an hour long. Go ahead and register.